found a dead body.
A young girl on the side of the road like a piece of trash.
I might have been the last person to see her alive.
It's hard to see your baby's name on a headstone. It's like your whole world just falls apart. Those two detectives got in the mind of a murderer.
You know what happened to her. I never strangled anybody.
It bothered me that she had the cuts on her head, that she probably fought back. That person's on your desk saying, help me.
San Diego, California. Surf, sunshine, a laid-back vibe.
It's a beautiful area. There's a pier out there. You got sandy beaches, and it's just a nice place to hang out.
Ocean Beach was filled with people who were just free and living the life.
Long a magnet for those seeking a better way of life, San Diego's Ocean Beach is also home to those struggling to get by.
There's a lot of homeless, there's drug problems down in Ocean Beach, alcoholics. There's been a number of crimes on the street that have hit the headlines.
Everything was going great, just seemed like heaven, you know. That was before Shannon was murdered.
My uncle and aunt were taking me to a Padres game. And my uncle took the back way, which took us by a small construction road.
It's Sunday. There's no construction. Maybe they can avoid the usual game day traffic. When suddenly, the unexpected.
What? My aunt started yelling out that she saw a dead body. And my uncle didn't believe her, and she's still very adamant about it. You know, it was kind of hard to tell from the road whether or not it was a dead body or just a mannequin. But as I got closer, I could tell that it was a naked female.
Nick's uncle calls 911.
They wanted me to confirm that she was actually dead.
My nephew saw it, my wife.
And I got closer to see if I saw any breathing. Told him, no, there's no breathing. It was really surreal. It was a lot to take in. We just couldn't believe it. That, you know, we found a dead body. I felt sad that someone so young had to lose their life.
It was late in the morning. It was a bright sunny day. It was a hot day.
Within minutes, the construction site is swarming with police. Right away, they can see this is no accident.
The positioning of the body was such that it was very out of place. You had a very pretty young blonde girl lying on her back, her blonde hair flayed back as if she had been dumped at the scene. Obvious injuries to the body around the neck area. You could visibly see ligature marks on the front of the neck. There was a gash over the eye indicating some kind of assault had taken place.
There is nothing to identify the Jane Doe. There's little blood, just tire tracks running between her body and the road.
This was probably not the place that she was killed. This was rather the place that her body was deposited.
With those tire tracks, we're able to get some dimensions on a possible vehicle that could have been involved.
Two other items are discovered near the body.
There was a blue jacket, and there was a Mountain Dew bottle, which was between her arm and the side of her body.
The medical examiner concludes the young woman has been there for about 12 hours.
Smears were taken of the oral, vaginal, and rectal orifices. The head, hands, and feet were bagged to preserve any physical evidence.
The first task for investigators, find out who the victim is.
Her fingerprints matched in the Cal ID system to a prior arrest on a young female by the name of Shannon Conway, who had been arrested for public intoxication in Ocean Beach.
Shannon Conway was only 18 years old. Police have no idea where she had been living and no idea how she ended up dead 40 miles inland in San Marcos. The police tracked down her mother in LA.
Hello?
When they told me, it's like your whole world just falls apart, you know, because you can't believe it.
Jody Bojanic clings to the hope that the dead girl is someone other than her daughter.
I was out of it. They said it was better off because of my mental state not to see her. So my sister-in-law saw pictures and she told me, Jody, oh my gosh, it is Shannon. That was my baby. And reality sets in. Can't believe that. She's gone.
The autopsy confirms what detectives suspected. It's a homicide. Cause of death, strangulation.
It appears to have been a wide ligature that trapped a necklace that was still present on the neck beneath it.
Shannon Conway didn't die without a fight.
Above and below the ligature were small comma-shaped abrasions that are characteristic of fingernail scrapings. If you grab your neck and you try to pull away a hand or a ligature, you end up causing small gouges that are comma-shaped, because that's the shape of the nail on the hand.
Swabs taken by the medical examiner at the crime scene test positive for semen.
Therefore, the victim had had sex or was sexually assaulted prior to her death.
Shannon's mother tells detectives her daughter ran away to San Diego a month before she was killed. She admits Shannon's childhood was troubled. She'd been running away for years.
She liked San Diego. She liked the weather there. So that's where she went. And the rest is history.
Despite their problems, mother and daughter remained close. Jody Bojanic last spoke to Shannon 2 weeks before she died.
She called me and told me, Mom, come check on me. And she was really scared. I don't know why. And I went down there to check on her and I couldn't find her.
Jody never discovered what had frightened her daughter, but she does give detectives a solid lead. Shannon had an ex-boyfriend who likes hanging out at the beach. Ocean Beach. San Diego, July 1995. The naked body of a teen runaway has been found dumped by a roadside. Before she was murdered, Shannon Conway had been living day-to-day out of a sleeping bag on Ocean Beach.
Detectives started scouring the area of Ocean Beach for witnesses or acquaintances, anybody that knew anything about Shannon Conway, knew anything about her habits, knew anything about where she liked to hang out, anybody that had last seen her.
Even the homeless people that don't have televisions and radios soon became aware of that and were talking amongst themselves. So it was hot news.
Investigators believe the secret of what happened to her lies here.
It's quite the beach scene. So there's a lot of kids down there, young people, a lot of surfers.
That it's awesome. Lots of traffic and sunshine and all the crazy stuff that goes on. People would bring picnics to the beach and share them and, you know, other things, beer and joints.
The laid-back hippie scene that drew Shannon in hides a dark underbelly. Some of the drifters who wash up on Ocean Beach have long rap sheets. For a naive 18-year-old girl, it's a dangerous place.
It can be rough at times down there in the evenings.
It's quite well known amongst the locals. It has a high transient population.
4 days after Shannon's body was found, detectives tracked down her ex-boyfriend, Jim Van Dar.
He was another one of those colorful, local, beach-type people that basically lived out of his van. He had befriended Shannon as a runaway.
Van Dar tells detectives Shannon dumped him more than 6 months earlier.
She told me that I was too old for her, and I was heartbroken. She was hanging around with the kind of people that I was always wanting to keep her away from, you know. I didn't.
What kind of people are those?
They looked like a bunch of homeless transients to me. We had some arguments. She just had a mouth on her that she could say things to get people so mad they'd want to hurt her.
Did you ever hurt her?
No.
You ever hit her?
I don't think so.
Were you with her the night she died?
No.
How did she die?
I heard she got strangled.
Is the ex-boyfriend telling the truth? Detectives speculate. Did he kill her in a jealous rage? For now, Jim Van Dar is a person of interest. Shannon Conway's violent death ended a life that started with promise.
She was just a loving little girl and full of life. She'd come into the door and say, "Mama, I love you," and I'd say, "I love you too." She was just beautiful. She was my little tomboy. Everywhere she went, she had her baseball and her little bat. I got blessed with a son, and they were close.
Then, at age 10, her life turned upside down.
A friend came by and told Shannon that I was on drugs. And Shannon didn't believe it. And she asked me, and I told her yes. And she was not happy.
To escape her mother's drug use, Shannon started running away.
I tried to get clean, and I couldn't get clean, so she didn't want to come home. I'd tell her to go back to school, you know, and get an education and have a better life than Mom.
Instead, Shannon's life spiraled downward. Eventually, Shannon found her own surrogate family amongst the beach bums and transients on Ocean Beach. Vicka Thompson made friends with Shannon just weeks before her murder.
The first time I saw Shannon was sitting on the beach just with random people, and she was eating a burrito, and somebody joked about her burrito, and she said something really funny, and I laughed at her, and then she kind of laughed too, and we just connected.
Vicka was 25, 7 years older than Shannon, and she took her under her wing.
She looked really young and seemed really inexperienced. She seemed really lost and confused and like she was having a hard time.
A week after Shannon's murder, Vicka hears the news. Alarm bells go off.
My heart sank, and I was just like, oh, God. I might have been the last person to see her alive.
She tells the police she was with Shannon the day before she died, and she may have seen her killer.
We were at the beach. It was hot and sunny. Just a regular day in July at the beach. And yeah, we got thirsty after burritos.
Vicka, Shannon, and their friend Ed head to the store.
We were at the gas station when that guy came in. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, approaching her, kind of slid up next to her. She was like, "Hey, can you buy me some candy?" And he said, "Sure, I'll buy you some candy." And then they were flirting back and forth. She was very flirty with men, and she seemed to bounce from one man to another. She was open to anything. She was looking to have fun. He's kind of on the short side and like muscular, military-looking guy. And he bought her some candy. And he's like, "Come on, let's go." And she just breezed past me to the truck, kind of bouncing, kid-like, happy, you know. But I knew that she was going willingly, so I figured not to intervene anymore.
Inside the truck, Vika sees a second man.
It was a gray truck, and I didn't look at the license plate. Both those guys looked like they could have been brothers, you know, with short hair, same height, same color. And I figured I would see her again in a couple of days, and they drove away.
Less than 24 hours later, Shannon Conway's naked body is dumped by the side of the road. Now, San Diego Homicide are exploring two suspects: the ex-boyfriend and the man in the mysterious gray pickup. San Diego Homicide are on the hunt for the killer of 18-year-old Shannon Conway. Her friend Vika Thompson points the finger at two men with crew cuts that Shannon drove off with in a gray pickup truck.
When I heard that she was dead, I instantly thought it was those guys. I just felt horrible. I wish I had stopped her.
The police search for the mysterious truck, but without a license plate, it's a needle in a haystack. The ex-boyfriend angle looks like a bust too. He says he hasn't spoken to Shannon since they broke up, and his alibi stands up. Then, a new tip points detectives to a third suspect, 39-year-old Keith Martin, an Ocean Beach regular.
The witness overheard what they thought was Keith talking about a murder, and they thought he was talking about Shannon Conway.
The informant describes Martin as angry and with a grudge against women. Another witness saw a van similar to Martin's parked near the crime scene.
His vehicle matched the description of a vehicle that was seen in the San Marcos area about the time that the body was actually found.
On September 1st, 4 weeks after the murder, the police tracked down Keith Martin.
Keith Martin was a former Vietnam veteran. He had issues with alcohol and drug substance abuse.
What's with that?
He basically was a transient who lived out of his van in the Ocean Beach area. He was a guy who was known to pick up young girls and take them out in his van.
What's this? Come on, guys, come on. Break.
The DNA was great because it was our starting point. But DNA just isn't the only thing that solves these cases. It's other things such as witness statements, identifying vehicles that the suspect was driving. What type of person was he? How did he treat ladies? Was he in San Diego at the time of the murder? Were we able to place him in the Ocean Beach area? Those types of things really build a case and put things together.
He admits he was in San Marcos the weekend Shannon Conway was murdered. He claims he was visiting a friend.
He indicated that he possibly knew a young girl by the name of Shannon Conway, but couldn't remember for sure if he had allowed her to change clothes in his van at one time, but he absolutely denied being involved in her disappearance and her death.
I'm like a very plausible story.
I never killed a woman. I don't have anything to do with this close murder. Not anything to do with it.
He confirmed that he had blood stains all over his van. He had blood stains on articles within his van.
There's some blood in that truck, and it's my blood, not her blood. So I'm not worried.
He made an unusual statement without even being asked about whether or not he had sex with the victim. He told the detectives that they wouldn't find any biological evidence of his associated with Shannon Conway's body.
It stops them cold. Detectives have not told him that Shannon Conway was sexually assaulted.
That truly raised a red flag.
Detectives take a DNA sample from Martin and search his blood-spattered van.
He had made statements to people that he had blood all over his van, and he had a hard time scrubbing the blood off of his van.
Is this Shannon's blood?
We had DNA evidence at that scene. DNA evidence in semen, on a jacket. We also had DNA on her body. We also had a Mountain Dew bottle that was right next to her arm, and fingerprints were all over that Mountain Dew bottle.
Samples from a mattress cover, headrest, and door panel are sent for DNA analysis. Convinced Keith Martin killed Shannon Conway, detectives arrest him.
Oh, I said, you got him, you know, and they said, yeah, we got him. And there was relief that they caught this man that did this to her.
Relief doesn't last long.
I don't know who she is. I don't remember seeing it. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. All right.
Days before Martin's preliminary hearing, the case starts to crumble.
The DNA results came back conclusively against Keith Martin being associated with his semen inside of Shannon Conway's body, and likewise, her blood DNA was not associated with his van.
The crime lab also confirms Martin's fingerprints are not the prints on the soda bottle found next to Shannon's body.
They called and said that that wasn't the right man, that they had to let him go. And I was mad again, you know, very angry.
Keith Martin was the prime suspect in this case, but they could no longer prosecute him without other evidence pointing towards his involvement. The DA's office had no choice but to drop charges against Mr. Martin.
Homicide detectives aren't as ready to let Martin off the hook.
Detectives were still confident that Keith Martin had some involvement in this case.
He seems to know an awful lot about the murder. Detectives wonder, could he be an accomplice? But for now, he walks. There's more bad news for San Diego homicide. Information from the crowds on the beach dries up.
Detectives basically were left with a case that had no direction and no focus. It was one of those cases that kind of sticks in the craw of every investigator. You know, you want answers not only to what happened to her, but providing justice for her family, for her mother.
2 months after Shannon Conway was strangled, her killer is still on the loose. With no new leads and other more pressing priorities, San Diego homicide puts the investigation on ice.
The case ultimately went cold.
Years go by.
I went through all these years looking at people, you know, thinking, who did it?
I remember she wanted to go back home and get her life together. And that's why it was so sad when she chose to get in the car with that guy.
Craven Road is all built up. Actually, when I lived out that way, I went to the college there. And every time I drove by there, I did actually remember finding Shannon, thinking about if, you know, they'd solved her murder or not.
In May 2008, new life is breathed into the investigation. Detectives Rick Scully and Dan Aarons are handed a stack of cold case files.
With the San Diego Sheriff's Department, we have about 400 homicide cold cases. They date back to the 1930s. What I like about the cold case unit is family members out there of these victims have some sort of an idea that at least the case is being worked. And we're doing whatever we can possibly do to solve these cases.
Something about Shannon Conway grabs their attention.
She was one that was falling through the cracks. She was homeless. Her mom had problems. She was a runaway. And no one had called asking about the Shannon Conway case for years. A young girl on the side of the road like a piece of trash. Kind of makes you want to get out there and solve the case.
Detectives Scully and Aarons start from scratch.
It bothered me that she had the cuts on her head, that she probably fought back. That person's on your desk saying, "Help me."
They start with the only serious suspect back in 1995, the drifter living in his van at Ocean Beach, Keith Martin.
Was he somehow associated with the true killer?
He spent time in Ocean Beach. He had a white van that was seen in the city of San Marcos where her body was found. There was blood in the van. Turns out it wasn't her blood, it was someone else's blood. But this is a pretty good suspect.
Help may come from cutting-edge tools that weren't available a decade earlier.
If we got DNA, it belongs to somebody. There's got to be a way to find out whose DNA this is.
In 1995, the type of DNA testing used was very much in its infancy. Different types of tests were used then as compared to what are used now. CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, allows us to solve a lot more crimes using DNA.
Detectives send samples from the crime scene for fresh analysis.
Those swabs were examined for the presence of semen, and that jacket was examined for the presence of blood, and it was also examined for the presence of semen.
What science uncovers will turn a stone-cold case red hot. For 13 long years, someone has been getting away with the murder of 18-year-old runaway Shannon Conway. In 2008, cold case detectives Rick Scully and Dan Aarons review the case. As they wait for fresh DNA results, they hit the streets of San Diego.
Cold cases are hard. You don't have the benefit of having things fresh in people's minds. You might come across a witness that wants to help, but they just don't remember.
Cities like San Diego make working a cold case even harder.
You have a large military population in San Diego. They come and go. You have the surfers. They're going up and down the coast. And, your basic homeless people that just wander around.
Even Shannon's friend Vika has moved away.
It made a huge impact in my life. Yeah, I just instantly wanted to go live in a house and not be anywhere that there's risk like that. Never occurred to me that I could get killed,
Another Ocean Beach transient on the investigators' radar is ex-boyfriend Jim Van Dar. After all, Shannon had dumped him and he never got over it.
You knew I was looking for you. Why the heck didn't you just come forward and say, "Hey, I want you to catch the guy that did this"?
I don't know why, because it's bad memory. I'm going to love her forever.
Who became her boyfriend?
I don't know. That's what happened to her. She went her own way because I was too mean to her.
Is Keith Martin your friend?
Don't know him.
Well, that's the guy they arrested for her murder, but they let him go.
I don't know.
They never killed no one, right?
I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Because I know I didn't do it.
We did take his DNA, and he was eliminated that way.
And with no DNA links or new evidence to Keith Martin, the mystery of who killed the 18-year-old may never be solved. 2 months into the cold case, science pays off.
The DNA profile obtained from the evidence sample, specifically from the swab taken from Shannon Conway, was searched against all other cases in the CODIS system and all samples from convicted offenders.
We got lucky. We got a hit. It's Mr. Williams, Eddie Williams.
Michael Eddie Williams, a name that's never been on the police radar for killing Shannon. He's serving a 40-year stretch in Mississippi for molesting kids. It's Williams' first serious brush with the law, so his DNA didn't hit the CODIS database until long after Shannon's case has gone cold.
The DNA profile that we obtained was on the order of 1 in 1 quadrillion. In essence, now one can say that that DNA profile came from Michael Williams, and only Michael Williams, barring Michael Williams having an identical twin.
We now had a name and a face to put with the unknown DNA profile that was found at the crime scene. And that changed the scope of our entire investigation.
I was at the doctor's office, and my phone rang, and he said, "We got a match." And I said, "A match?" He said, "Yeah, a DNA match." I said, "You're kidding." And I went, "Yes!" I mean, I screamed out, "Yes! Yes, 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 they got him."
What changed this case was a DNA hit that came back to our suspect. And at that point, things started to move and move quickly.
After 13 years, will Jody Bojanic finally get some answers to who killed her daughter?
The fact that Mr. Williams' DNA is inside Shannon Conway's body does not necessarily translate into rape and murder. We now had to prove that she was sexually assaulted by this individual and murdered by this individual.
So it's not case closed just because his DNA there. There could be a reason why his DNA is there.
Digging more into Michael Williams' life, investigators hit pay dirt.
We learned that he had been in the United States Navy in the mid-90s, that he was actually in California in 1995 in San Diego. He was attending his A school in the Navy off of Coronado Base. And so we knew that we had placed him in California at the time of Shannon Conway's death.
Williams' military records show he was declared a deserter a few days before Shannon's death. Another big piece in the puzzle falls into place. Forensics link Michael Eddie Williams to the soda bottle found next to Shannon's body.
I compared to one of the latent print on the Mountain Dew bottle and was able to identify his print on the bottle.
August 28, 2008. Detective Scully and Aarons head to East Mississippi Correctional Facility to grill Michael Williams.
He was surprised to see us, to say the least.
Well, you need to explain to me how your DNA and your fingerprints come to be on this dead girl. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember her.
He denied knowing Shannon Conway. He denied ever killing anybody in his life. He admitted having sex with women while he was in the Navy in San Diego.
I've been there, yeah.
When's the last time you were there?
Don't remember her.
I mean, I've slept with a lot of girls.
Take a look at her. Like, your semen sounded her.
I don't remember her.
Williams admits hurting girlfriends during sex arouses him.
I had sex with her while I pulled her hair. Had my hand down her throat.
Tighten up and choke her so that she's almost unconscious. No, I mean, that's what the desired effect is, right?
No. My wife's the only one I've ever done stuff like that with. And I never choked her till she passed out.
Williams' wife Jennifer confirms his taste for dangerous sadistic sex.
Eddie put a noose around her neck, looped it around a rafter in their home, and attempted to have sex with her while she was unconscious from the noose tightening up around her neck. A profile emerged of Mr. Williams of being a sexual predator, sexual deviant tendencies, but now the task in front of us was, is he also a killer?
Take a look at her. Because, like, you're seeing the sound in her. I don't remember her.
Williams admits he likes sadistic sex. So could he be the man in the gray pickup that Shannon's friend Vicka Thompson saw at the gas station? Detectives ask Williams what kind of vehicle he drove in 1995.
How did you get around back then? Yeah, I had a Dodge Ram 50.
His wife tells a different story.
She told us that when she first met Williams in Texas in 1996, he was driving a 1987 gray Mitsubishi pickup truck.
Like the vehicle Vicka saw Shannon get into the day before she died.
When she was asked how sure she was that it was a Mitsubishi pickup truck and not a Dodge Ram, she says, "Oh, I can tell you it was a Mitsubishi because it's one of those words I've never been able to pronounce."
The gray pickup, the DNA match, the lack of an alibi, the liking for violent sex. It all adds up to Williams being Shannon's killer.
As the interview with Eddie Williams wound down, it became quite obvious that he was starting to shut down on us.
And then, one last casual question unravels a 13-year-old mystery.
He was asked what his drink of preference was in 1995 when he was in the Navy.
Mountain Dew. Do you like Mountain Dew? Yes.
When he said the two words, Mountain Dew, he had just placed himself at that crime scene, both in his own words, his fingerprint, and his semen.
An empty bottle of Mountain Dew was found right next to her body with your left finger on it. You know what happened to her. I don't remember the girl. I know I never strangled anybody. Mike, you can't get around that bottle.
The fact that his fingerprint was now identified on this bottle, which is in direct contact with Shannon Conway's body, made it much tougher for him to deny that he was involved in sexually assaulting her and ultimately murdering her.
Scully. Okay.
A week after their jail visit, hard evidence that Williams is lying about the truck.
Michael Eddie Williams was ticketed 3 times in the state of Mississippi driving a 1987 Mitsubishi pickup truck.
What kind of truck did you drive back then? Do you remember, Williams? Ram, Dodge Ram.
It was obvious that he was trying to mislead us.
Another breakthrough. Detectives link a Mitsubishi truck to the crime scene.
The wheelbase measurements fit within an inch and 1.25 inches of the wheelbase of the tracks that were found at the crime scene. Now that we had conclusive information, we made a decision to re-interview Eddie Williams 2 months later.
That's a traffic citation. You're the driver of not a Dodge Ram, a Mitsubishi. Tell us about that Mitsubishi. Yeah, I don't remember Mitsubishi. How is it you're driving a California plate on an 87 Mitsubishi? She didn't tell us the truth. I'm trying to remember, man. Y'all just... Well, you're lying about the Mitsubishi truck. All right.
Williams' mother tells the detectives her son has been lying to the family for years. Her diary tells the story.
He's lied to me again. He did not get a release from the Navy, so apparently he told the mom he got released, but he lied. And then she says he's actually AWOL again, and by the 16th he'll be considered a deserter. It just seems lies come so naturally to him. I sometimes wonder if he knows what the truth is. You can't believe anything he says. It all comes up lies. This is your own mother. Y'all can kiss my think I'm going to say that I killed somebody I didn't kill.
Ahrens and Scully are convinced they've found Shannon's killer. Still, without a confession, will the case stand up in court? San Diego detectives think they can prove Navy deserter Michael Eddie Williams is Shannon Conway's killer. His DNA and fingerprints link him to Shannon and the crime scene. His truck looks like the one Shannon got into the last time she was seen alive. The case, though, is far from closed.
My job when I came in was to take a look at the case from kind of the defense perspective and see what kind of holes they would be poking in the evidence that we had and try and plug up those holes.
One of those holes is Keith Martin, the transient living out of his van who detectives 13 years ago thought was Shannon's killer.
He himself had said that Shannon could have been back in his van at some point. So the obvious thing the defense is going to do is say, well, did you check to make sure that Shannon's DNA was nowhere in Keith Martin's van?
I did not find anything in Martin's van that yielded a DNA profile which matched Shannon Conway.
Could Keith Martin have been an accomplice, the second man in the gray pickup?
The defendant could easily have said, well, sure, I had sex with this gal. I had sex with lots of gals. But my buddy is the one who took off in the car with her. It wasn't me.
There was no additional evidence that was found that implicated anyone other than Michael Williams.
Keith Martin is finally cleared.
DNA was not enough to say that Williams raped her and he killed her. There wasn't findings on the autopsy consistent with forcible rape. That doesn't mean that he didn't force himself on her. He enjoyed asphyxiation while he was in the process of having sex with somebody. And it could be that it started off consensual and he began strangling her and she struggled and he ended up killing her afterwards.
The fact that the hyoid bone was fractured indicates an enormous amount of force was exerted to compress the neck.
In July 2009, Michael Eddie Williams is charged with rape and first-degree murder and extradited to San Diego.
I was happy. I was elated. They did it. They did their job.
As soon as I heard he got caught, I was just like so happy inside, and a weight was lifted off, and just this fear dissipated.
14 years after Shannon Conway was dumped by a San Diego roadside, detectives are finally able to piece together her last terrible hours. On the afternoon of July 29, 1995, Shannon Conway gets into the gray pickup and drives away with Michael Williams. Sometime afterwards, they have sex, and it turned violent.
I believe she was already beaten up prior to the point that he raped her. The blood on the jacket was consistent with a wound that Shannon had above her left eye. She's not going to have consensual sex with somebody after she's been beaten up.
I believe Shannon Conway was raped and murdered at one location. That location is unknown to this day. She was then dumped in San Marcos.
He pulled her by the ankles out of the back of that truck. You know how guys will throw beer can, soda can in the back of their truck? It got caught between her arm and her body, and when he pulled her out of the bed of that truck, it all fell to the ground, the bottle and her.
He also threw out her tank top and her jacket as he was driving away.
I've tried to put myself in his shoes. You know, you don't do that to somebody.
To this day, the cold case detectives don't know who the second man in the truck is. Days before his preliminary hearing, Williams pleads guilty to murder, although he denies the rape charge.
It's scary to know that somebody like this was in the Navy, was hanging out in Ocean Beach, but in reality, inside, he is evil.
If we hadn't have got that DNA hit, I don't think the case would ever be solved. It felt really good.
Mr. Williams is a sexual monster of the worst kind. He's a sexual predator. Not only did he rape and murder Shannon Conway, but he also molested children. He has never shown 1 ounce of regret, 1 ounce of remorse, or 1 ounce of sympathy for any of his victims.
Those two detectives got in the mind of a murderer. It made Mr. Williams know, I can't fight this. I'm caught. And that's ultimately why he pled guilty. So the detectives did an outstanding job.
I was so proud of my guys on what they did in the investigation and that we were able to give closure to Jody.
They never gave up. They didn't. They never gave up on my Shannon. Not once.
Almost 15 years to the day since Shannon's murder, Michael Williams is sentenced to life in prison without parole.
I went right to her cemetery and said, baby, we got him. We got him, Shannon.
His sentence will begin after he serves his current 40-year sentence in Mississippi.
It's hard to see your baby's name on a headstone, you know? Never gonna have no grandchildren by her. You know, I never got to know her.